So I was telling you earlier that I had you on my radar because I had seen you posting some things about your sobriety and the journey. And, I guess it's always time and place in the journey of life. It just so happens one of our mutual buddies recently jumped into business with you. And I said, Brandon, you got to connect me to this guy because this is what I wanted. This is where I wanted us to end up, because even setting up today in the conversations we had leading up to this moment, there's a poise and a peace to someone like you that's come through the other side of once being addicted and once being strangled by the grips of life, where we think that is what we're here for. But in reality, it's the complete opposite, to which you've found the discovery of the sense of self. I've realized that. And man, it's just an honor to have you right here to be able to have this conversation, Darren. It's going to be a good time, man. Thank
you. I appreciate it. Same here, my man. Been ready. We've been waiting for this for a couple months.
Yeah. You were telling me before this, you get into your zone. I feel like you're getting into your zone right now with the mindset and into the flow to be able to just bring the heat, per se, for the audience. In the case of where I want to start this, I think about two contradicting points in your life where you've got the old self and you've got the new self, the sober Darren, the former Darren that was out there driving a life, rolling high, celebrities, public figures. In the title of your book, Aiming High, you were high. Like, you were high on life. You were literally high in the doing of the different narcotics, drugs. Talk to me about the differences in the highs of then, off of the artificial high, and the high of today, where you're living in your purpose and you're living in your full self, and what that does for you in today's day and age.
I think we were just talking about this before, that over a little mini lunch before we got here. Before, it's not real. That's why I'm so passionate about speaking to kids, high school kids, college kids. If you have to be somebody to put something in your system just to fit in, you have a problem. That is not normal. Alcohol, a couple drinks here and there, yeah, I get it's a social lubricant, takes the edge off, you have some fun. But that was never me. I needed to put something into my system, become somebody I knew I wasn't. And I was incapable of becoming without whatever that substance was. And, when I eventually started the agency, I got this broken, insecure, individual that somehow landed some of the most iconic, stars in the world as clients, and I got to fake it to make it again. The imposter syndrome. And the only way I was able to do that was to put something into my system to be comfortable in that environment and to let everybody think I was comfortable enough being me. Until that eventually obviously hit a brick wall, and we can get into that later. But now, kind of like I said earlier, the past 5-6 weeks, it's my life. I was out here, for Tom Brady with Grant Cardone, and I, me and my boy Ryan and Vo, had Mike Tyson at a corporate in Orlando on Monday. Went to lunch with Mike after. Great guy. I've been around him for years. And last Friday was Magic Johnson and Dominique Wilkins, and at a big keynote in Atlanta. Magic's been my guy for 30 years. Dominique's over 20. And then just last night, regular night out, I take Chevy Chase and my boy Patrick and Chevy's best friend to a Laker game with my girlfriend and her good friend. And we're sitting with my dear friend Jeannie Buss, the Lakers owner, and Linda Rambis. And, Jay Moore, Jeannie's fiance, is a great guy. Completely sober. Knowing that the internal and external Darren Prince has every right to be there because of the human being that he is, not because of what I've accomplished professionally. If anything, it's the personal mission and the personal journey, because vulnerability in today's world and accountability and ownership, it's a huge asset that sets you apart from everybody else. And that's where that calm I think sense of self and peace and spiritual confidence comes from. I ain't sitting here talking about how great I am because I just name dropped a bunch of people. They are friends, clients, colleagues. Our phone call with Hulk Hogan, I told you 2 nights ago, he's my spiritual brother. You know, I don't even refer to them as clients anymore. It's so much bigger than that. And I've arrived at sense of self, you know, knowing that I can walk into a room with anybody. And I'm there because I deserve to be there because I finally have the exterior aligned with the interior. And it took a lot of work to get here.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait to unpack the work that you had to go through there, the different decisions, the levels of vulnerability, the accountability that go into that. You were just sharing with me, I think, something that was incredibly instrumental in what I think is a process that can help somebody go back and begin to rework how they see themselves and the relationship that they have with themselves. And in this case for you, it was an investment you made in yourself to be better at what you do, whether it's here on a podcast, whether it's on a stage. And you were walking me through the process of going back and talking to the younger Darren. Talk to me about the virtues of the younger Darren that even through all of the junk that ended up compiling along the way and the insecurities and the doubts and the different variables of yourself where you realized you weren't being who you were and ultimately got suppressed. Of those virtues, what were they that were inside of you that you were unable to recognize that still make you the pure, gentle, loving human being that you are, that is ultimately still a piece of you today and or was just unrecognized during the journey there?
I mean, I always tell people, and most will tell you, I was never a bad person. I was a sick person. And
that's powerful.
You know, telling you earlier about
so powerful.
My boy John Alvino, that my trainer, fitness coach, mindset coach. We go back 30-something years, and he's master NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming, and that story, getting reconnected to my higher self, I did a few days before Jay Shetty podcast. Just felt out of alignment. And I know there's always different levels to get to. And for all of us, you know, I mean, Magic took a 10-minute break by himself in the green room before he did his keynote last week. I leave the room. And the Magic Man wants that time to himself to get centered in the zone. And so we all always need to find what that sweet spot is. Because a lot of times, too, when you're giving out this energy, it can be draining. And you know, if we're not dialed in, what's the point of doing it? Now you're being not selfish for yourself, and I think being selfish for yourself to be selfless to others is perfect, and you're allowed to do that. But like I said, I mean, I don't think it was anything outside, as we talked about earlier, lack of self-worth and anxiety and just uncomfortable in my own skin, being verbally teased for being stupid or dumb, whatever the words were that were being used back then. You know, so you take that into the real world, even though I became a success at 14, that eventually starting a multi-million-dollar baseball card company, I'm still looking back at everybody else. You know, look at me, look at you. So now it's all the ego stuff. You know, I remember, I mean, 16, 17 years old and walking through hallways like, yeah, I'm making more money than all teachers in this school. You know, I took care that your father's a doctor. Guess what? I made more money than he did last year. I'm making $300,000-$400,000 yet. But that's not authenticity. That's ego. That's insecurity. That's brokenness. That's look at me and look at you. You know, but I think I had to go through all that. And then the 24 years of hell of my eventual opiate addiction to eventually come out of the other side the way that I did.
Yeah, yeah. I think about how collected you are. Just like a soothing feeling in your presence, which I think is fantastic. There's a lot of different directions I can go with what you just said, and we'll keep compounding this. but I don't want to let the part where you said you were successful at 14 years old. I mean, you're still kind of in puberty at 14. You don't even know, what dating is like really at 14. And you're talking about success at 14. How does the insecure kid, how does the kid that has no self-worth run into, stumble into, fall into, and then without those intangible resources that are valuable to development and growth, and even in some cases business, make it? Like what? That's just, you're an anomaly in that case to me, but it's also like the biggest riddle in my mind, because you got 30, 40, 56-year-olds that still haven't figured this out. Here you are talking about it at 14 years old. So walk us through some of what that was like.
So I had a fascination, I guess, for baseball cards. I was a late bloomer with girls and dating. Didn't mean much to me. So my friends at 13, 14, illegal house parties with the beers and wine coolers and all that stuff. Parents would go out and they would invite me over, but it wasn't my thing. I had this, in my own mind, it was always I had 4 different jobs: squeezing orange juice at a supermarket. I was a busboy. I delivered newspapers and worked at a pizzeria. And I would just take all that side money and buy my friends' card collections back then in 1983, 82, 84. Didn't care about it anymore. $20 for this one, $30. And the ones that kept their cards, they would want the players that were popular back then. So back then it was, Don Mattingly, Darryl Strawberry, Wade Boggs, Tony Hogan, Roger Clemens, Kirby Puckett. And I noticed that they were given cards by their fathers, grandfathers, and uncles. And there was these older, uglier, kind of smellier cards. But those are the cards I wanted because I was getting something called CCP, the Current Card Price Guide. There's no internet back then. This was like the Wall Street Journal. Once a week, I'd get it sent to me in the mail. And it was the stock market for cards. And I always noticed that the older ones, that really I didn't know who these guys were worth a lot more money. So I would give them the new ones and we would trade. So between all of that, one day I get challenged by a business teacher. He pulls 20 of us aside and he goes, go home, create a business. That's your work assignment. Tell me what it is in the morning. I took it that seriously.
Wow.
Nobody else did.
Huh.
I went home and right after dinner, ran up to my room. I started writing it down. I wasn't a book person. I wasn't a hyper-focused person. But this really seemed like, I thought he was dead serious. Going in to just tell my dad, hey, I'm starting a company called Baseball Card City. I need insurance. And my dad thinks I'm nuts. He goes, I go, yeah, Dad. I said, just in case anything happens to my cards, they're pretty valuable. And he's like, okay, what do you need? I said, probably about 8 or 9. He's like, all right, I'll call the homeowners. I'll get you $1,000 worth of insurance. And I look at him like he's crazy. I go, Dad, not 800 or 900, about 8,000 or 9,000. Because how the heck did you get $8,000 or $9,000 worth of cards? And who's going to buy them? I run upstairs. I get the CCP. For anybody that's a card collector, this was Beckett before Beckett. And I start showing them the value of all the cards. And he goes, but now who's going to buy them? I go upstairs again, get this big newspaper ad. It's like this big in the town paper. And I'll never forget the brothers' names, Sal and Rocco Slino. They ran a baseball card show at the Holiday Inn on Route 10 in Livingston, New Jersey. It was $20 for a table. So I said, Dad, for $20, I get 8 feet to exhibit all my cards, and I could buy, sell, and trade and make a bunch of money. So Steve Simon, God bless him, we go back since I was 10 years old. He's now the vice president of Prince Marketing Group. Imagine that. He shared the table with me. That's how far back we go. And he didn't care to make money. He threw some cards in a box 2 hours before. He just wanted to have fun with me. But what he didn't realize was I spent 2 weeks every single night for hours meticulously laying out my floor plan on my 4 feet. And signs, my dad had a typesetting and design company, professionally printed with prices and the years and the condition and, discounts if you buy one of these, 2 of these. It was meticulous. And that morning I woke up and it was everything to me. I was up at 5 a.m, almost like it was a Little League championship game.
I remember those days.
And I made over $1,000. And it was just this crazy family affair and celebration because my dad was there, was no longer with me, my mom, my Uncle Stu's no longer here. You know, it was just such an exciting time. My grandmother, Frances, and I guess, you know, looking back at it now, if I could talk to that 14-year-old self, it was such a great thing because it gave me a feeling of self and it gave me a feeling of purpose. And then I went home. I just felt alive for the first time in my life. I felt like I was in an environment. My dad always noticed that my brain worked very unlike everybody else's, but there was a special part of it that worked like no one's. And it was something with numbers and studying stats on the back of cards, almost like Rain Man and like Dustin Hoffman's character.
Yeah.
And so I'm flying high, man. But I'll tell you, you know, I'm home and it's 7, 8 o'clock at night and I'm in the bed and I'm reorganizing my cards because now I got to do another one next week. I'm finding all the shows in the area. This big wad of cash, and eventually it hit me again. I felt like that loser in the back of the room.
Wow.
So when I think back to those times, yeah, it was that chase. It was the thrill. It was the grind. It was the rush. But unless I was in the middle of it, man, I always needed to put something into my system to feel comfortable with life.
The loser part that you bring up, is that when you're not running and gunning? Is that when you're not selling the cards? How does that one creep back in? In your case, I get for everybody else, it might be a bit different, but there's, you know, it's like the body in motion tends to stay in motion. Therefore, you're in physics, right? The laws. It's like, you know, in modern day, I always feel like when you're doing stuff, you're productive, you're producing. Therefore, you're feeling proud and excited. In your case, did you take days off and then that's when it started to creep in? Did you have other things that were influencing how you started to see yourself in the phrase of lure?
No, I think unless I was in that environment at a convention or hustling on the phone with, eventually I had stockbrokers that were buying from me. I started running ads in the national publications called Sports Collectors Digest. I was the first probably person, not even kid, to have a cell phone in 1985, 86. The company was Bell Atlantic back then. This big battery pack with the rubber antenna, and it was probably $3 a minute. I remember my dad would go nuts when he saw the cell phone bills, but he knew I was making money, but still felt I was being reckless because he thought I liked, you know, people seeing me on the phone. So it was an insecurity thing, and he wasn't completely wrong. Because why can't you call somebody back and then use the landline? These bills are $1,000, $1,200 a month. You're crazy. And I would just be like, Dad, I'm making $20,000, $30,000 a month. Who cares? But he saw that this was all, again, a self-esteem issue. I needed people to see me outside in high school holding this leather thing, and the heck is Darren Prince doing? Like in between class, grabbing the phone, calling stockbrokers, and that wanted me to find cards from, you know, that weekend. And so I think unless I was doing anything but that, I didn't feel good at anything. So there's no sense of confidence or self-worth.
Yeah. So in the maintenance of your fueling this becoming and this to-be future life of yours, you progress through this. That's like, I consider that maybe, you know, a phase. I'm looking at it like phase 1. You've got the wins out of the gate, selling cards and making thousands of dollars. How does that, where's the intercept between that direction and you going off and starting your own, what becomes agency, and also the points where you start realizing the problem is as severe as you come to learn that it is the discovery of your, what is to become problem after you get into bigger business and you start exploring other sides of the high? Or are you watching yourself at this point, finding yourself suffering through the point before you get to that next business endeavor, right? Where it really starts to accelerate.
Well, so I sold Baseball Card City, which eventually became, I got to give my late father credit for this, Prince of Cards. And Prince of Cards became my moniker. There was no Darren Prince anymore. And, you know, I ate it up as I talk about on my book. I mean, I was like a young rock and roll star in the industry, man. Me and 3 or 4 of my guys, we were these like tycoons, these, you know, mega card moguls that were making millions of dollars. And, back before people knew what sneakerheads were and influencers and, national news stories. And so I was like, the Prince of Cards is here. And I dropped out of college my freshman year with the .89 GPA. That's how well that went. I was probably making upwards of $500,000. I decided that
wow,
I thought it was really cool when I was at these conventions that these athletes were signing autographs. I was like, how cool is that? Like, you could actually wait in line and meet Reggie Jackson or Mickey Mantle, one of these guys you look up to, take a photo with them, get an autograph, Muhammad Ali. Like, it's just incredible. And I think I was attracted to that again because of the insecurity. Like, I like that. Wow, that's really freaking cool, man, that I can do something like this. So now it's not just, it's still kind of corny. I'm selling cards, making money. I want to be around these type of people. And so I sold my database, and when I was left in my inventory, I got over $1 million at 19.
Wow.
I eventually went into private autograph signings, and I went for the biggest name on earth, Muhammad Ali. And my friend Harlan Warner, to this day, is a mentor and dear friend. And he brought me into Muhammad Ali's circle, and I started doing private autograph signings, like in a hotel suite with them. He'd sign hundreds of gloves and photos and Everlast trunks, and we'd start advertising them. And little by little, started getting a database. And one day he's like, there's a huge name that I know you're aware of, and he's out here in LA, and I think he'd be good for you to possibly work with, and I'll introduce you to his agent, Magic Johnson. And I go, man, I hate him. Because nobody hates Magic. I go, no, Harlan, I'm a diehard 1980s Celtics fan. Larry Bird's my guy, and he killed us. And he goes, well, he's a first-class guy. Let me make an introduction. And makes an introduce him to Lon Rosen, his longtime business partner and agent. Back then and still now, they do everything together. Lon's amazing. And took me under his wing, and I booked my first signing for him. And then I was off to the races. A friend introduces me to Chevy Chase. His family member was working for Chevy, and I got Pamela Anderson on my own, and then smoking Joe Frazier, because that only made perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Harlan gave me access to Ali when I kept the other half of the greatest rivalry in sports, and Joe was only in Philly, so he was 90 minutes away. So now we're booking all these signings. Started doing a couple of little appearances and stuff. And the transition out of that business was I got in trouble, as I talk about in my book. There was a mail order fraud investigation case for some Michael Jordan autographs, and had no idea they weren't legit. And I wound, for the first time in my life, in financial trouble, trying to refund people's money, keep my reputation intact. And it was a transition period because I took the last $3,000 to my name. I took my dad on a fly fishing trip to Alaska. That was always our thing. Usually local fishing, not a trip like that. Yeah. And he was pissed that I spent the money. Got, Dad, I don't care. He goes, you're in debt out of your ass. He goes, what do you think in spending this type? I'm like, I don't care. We're going. And I believe that trip, is the reason PMG exists to this day.
Wow.
And we were out there in this gorgeous stream with this tour guide with these fly rods, and he puts his pole down and sets it up for the cast. He looks at me, goes, what's your next move, kid? He goes, what do you think you're doing? You're going to get back in the, memorabilia business? And it's like, Dad, you know what? Started to realize that when you're on top, everybody wants to be there with you. When you're on bottom, you find out who your real friends are, and you see how many haters there are. I'm like, I don't really know what else I can do in that business. I already started doing signings with the biggest names in the world. I said, I really think I want to be an agent, but I just don't have 8 years to go to law school. Drops the fishing pole. He looks at me and goes, law school? Yeah, I know a lot of agents are lawyers, but why would you need to go to law school? Life is about who you know, not what you know. Any entertainment lawyer in Hollywood or New York City would kill to have your relationships. Mm-hmm. Why don't you start with somebody like Magic and tell them your vision? They all supported you during this FBI investigation. They know you didn't do anything wrong. You kept your reputation intact. And sure enough, it was about a month later. This was probably 1995, maybe early 96. I was in Michigan with him. I just booked an appearance for Irvin. I call him by his real name.
Yeah.
And he's always just such a gem, and has me come to his hotel suite to kind of go over the day and what we had to do. And It's almost like the same question my dad had, like, hey boy, because how's life? You hanging in there? You coming at him? I'm like, yeah, slowly but surely, man. It's a struggle, but I'm getting there. And he's like, you still like hustling with the business? And I go, it's funny you mentioned that to me because I'm not really. I'm like, I have a different idea. And I told him, he goes, if you want to be an agent, you better get a lot of big celebrities in your stable, and then you could really do good. He goes, you have any idea who you're looking to represent? And I was so nervous, man. My hands start sweating. It was one of those moments like, God, I got to go for it right now. I'm going to look back the rest of my life and regret it. And I was yeah, I was hoping I could start with you. And he puts his arms around my shoulder and he goes, look, man, he goes, boy, you made a mistake. And I know all about mistakes because that was a few years removed from this HIV announcement. He goes, but God tests great men and women and he's testing you. And you're gonna make lemonade out of lemons. He goes, I'm going to give you a couple years to go out there and hustle, be my agent. But if you don't use my name to knock down every door to get all the celebrity clientele you can, we ain't going to make it 2 years because life isn't about how successful I become. Life is about how successful I make you and everybody else around me so you could pay it forward when you get to that stage. Because my success is going to be something they've never seen in the world of retired athletes. Look at them now.
Absolutely.
Multi-billion-dollar brands.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't believe it. Like, the king is telling me go out and exploit them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just game
selfless.
over. It was
selfless.
It was game over at that point.
Yeah.
It was within a month. I lock in Smoke and Joe. I'm like, oh my God, I literally have the two biggest rivals in the history of sports, Ollie Frazier, Bird Magic. I got, half of them at this point. I still have my relationship with Muhammad. Larry, started working with Larry Bird, who I had a relationship with from the autograph signing business. I went right to Chevy Chase and Pamela Anderson because I wanted a little bit of that celebrity entertainment vibe. And got Rodman in 96 in the heyday of the biggest thing in the world of that 72-10 Bulls team. And yeah, we just, little by little, man, I started making that comeback. And
like your shirt says.
People don't know, though, I was making it the business front. But, I was living that imposter syndrome because for the first 5 or 6 years, and I always say this when I speak, I think I was living to use. And at some point, I don't know when, it turned out to using to live.
Wow. It's a great reversal on that thought. That's deep. That's deep. I mean, accept that one for a second, folks. That one's deep. And in that case for you, using to live turned out to be what, ultimately we're here for from your purpose point is the overcoming the addiction and, finding a new spiritual side of life. I don't know if you're finished on that point. Or you finished on that point? Okay. I don't want to let what I heard as an opportunity, as a lesson out of what you said there, and feel free to correct me. There's two things that stand out to me in what you just said. One was you got in with one person the right way, and one person ended up opening up a lot of other doors for you, which sounded like when it was the autographing, it was Muhammad Ali, correct? And he introduced you to the next guy, one of them being Magic. Leverage, right? And then over time, your vision changed. And when your vision changed, you had a relationship with somebody that said, I like you. You're a great guy. Whatever that conversation is, I'll let you go at it for me. And because of that seed that you planted from before, and because of that decision you made from back then, it ended up materializing out into the future. So that's the first thing, which was like, get in cahoots with somebody, be great, do great, deliver, be a great human being, whether at the point of your life at that time you felt that way inside or not. They saw something in you, man. There's something that they believed about you. So that's the first thing.
I'll tell you, let me interrupt you.
Please go.
One thing too, if you don't mind. There was a lot of times in the signing business and early in my agent career, I literally do deals to make no money. because the access around my people meant everything for the future of my company. To bring other bigwigs around them and further cement that relationship, even times if I had to come out of pocket and I knew what they wanted on something, this deal was 50 grand, 200 grand, 100 grand. If I couldn't get my thing, I'm like, I'm good. Because you can't buy the access that I'm about to have for the next 3 hours.
No way.
And that is why Prince Marketing Group is what it is today.
Wow.
I truly believe it. My relationship building on a personal level is unprecedented because it's always about life. It's about the friendship that my dad taught me. Take them to dinner, take them to lunch. If they don't want to leave because it's a pain in the ass for Hulk because he gets bombarded, make sure you got his best food delivered by the time he gets to the room so he can grab all these little things that allowed them to know the real me.
Yep.
Where the agent, that's just a byproduct. Like my mother can make freaking Magic Johnson money. I'm nobody special when it comes to that. Ain't that hard.
Yeah.
You know, to find opportunities once you put yourself in the mix. But that access, that was my superpower.
Everything, yeah. It reminds me of a mentor that I would consider a mentor. It's not like he's not anymore, but he brought me under his wing years ago. We were out traveling the country speaking together, and he always said something to me. He's very wealthy, and he said, whenever you go out to dinner, everybody is always trying to figure out, especially if the guy that or the people that you're with are winning, that they're going to pay the bill. Everybody's waiting for that person to pay the bill because it's expected. He says, don't ever be that guy. Pick the bill up for them, even though they can and they have the means and all that. So it wasn't long after I learned that. I was back here in Vegas, and some friends of mine, one of them, they were coming out to party. My cousin, its best friend, know Timmy Hardaway Jr. And we all went out. I took him out. I was hosting them all. And we were all hanging out, friends and all that good stuff. We went out to eat one time, and I was like, I'm going to do exactly what my mentor told me, because everybody's expecting Timmy to pick the bill up. Yeah. And I was like, no, I got this. Yeah. And they all, including Timmy, were like, he seriously just picked the bill up? Like, thank you. Yeah. The gratitude that came out of that was shocking, right? So I think it's kind of what you're saying there. You're willing to sacrifice, not the same thing, but similar. You're willing to sacrifice the money that you could have made to insulate that relationship over time.
I've got like my earth friends that really don't understand, and they would see, you know, back in the days with Robin and the bottle service and picking up, you know, thousands of dollars in tab, or back in my crazy days with the Gentlemen's Club and just taking care of everybody and everything, or just a nice dinner out with a dozen people, corporate clients that are paying my clients a lot more money than I'm getting out of it, and I'm taking care of the tab. Like, it makes no sense. Bro, why are you taking care of this? Your client's got tens of millions. This one's, I said, because that's what you do. Because I still look at it as I'm blessed to be in their presence, and I'm blessed that they've given me the opportunity to be a little piece of their world. So that's the way I show my gratitude.
So true. Yeah. Amen. That's why we're so on the same plane of thought, you and I. The second thing that I didn't want to let slip away, because I think this is important, was the influence your father had on you and how much wisdom he was giving you at certain important times, right? That you were able to have that understanding through him that helped you make smart decisions, right? That's just a beautiful thing there. So I think sometimes, because we're so close to our parents, that we sometimes turn them off. And I get every relationship's a bit different. I understand that. But I realized after I got sober that my dad was actually a smart guy. Like, I never considered him that. But now in hindsight, respectfully, I'm thinking, wow, I should have gave him more credit. And I just say that in response to how you were sharing the stories of what your father was saying there. All right, man, keeping this train moving forward. You know, I feel like we're getting a nice build-up here, man. It's a good start out of the gates we've got going on here. You got these guys coming in. Obviously, at this point, are you starting to explore more of the funner side of things, the party side of things, in now your new found identity around these people that get you in this new position to start taking the different types of drugs? Or is that sort of down the road some more at some sort of point, somebody hands it to you? How does that beginning start where you start to understand like, oh God, this is starting to go in a different direction?
Well, thankfully, I learned real quick with magic about what a morality clause is. And it laid out illegal drugs, that if I'm caught doing them, it'll mean termination. But being a young drug addict in training, I figured out a way around that. And between my steroid addiction and always working out and physical pain and anxiety, it wasn't even doctor shopping. It was super easy. Any doctor I needed opiates from, I got them. Oxycontins, Vicodins, and Percocets were my best friends, and eventually Ambien at night. Mix it in some cocktails during the week, and I'm good. I don't need no more blow or ecstasy and the whatever, and all that crap and weed. I got what I need, man. Yeah. So we'd be out, like I said, I was here late 90s with Pamela Anderson, my boy Chuck Zito, her co-star Natalie Rattano from the VIP series for the Tyson boat, the fight. Like, you name the event, I was there. And now the internet's around. And not social media quite yet. But, it became a star in my own world. And not realizing, again, it's really nothing that I did. It took me until I got to recovery to realize it's what they've done. They're the stars with exceptional talent on the field or on the court or on a TV set or on a movie set. But I wanted everybody's validation, and they believed it too. Because it's, oh my God, have you seen what Darren Prince is doing? Darren Prince just had Dennis Rodman at the local diner. He was in town, but like all over the town paper, people stopping me. Like, I thought that was success. I thought I arrived. Remember Magic's at the local Shortell's Hilton one time. Hulk was in town, 10 minutes from my mom and dad's house. But him and Robin on separate occasions. My mom's and dad's house. Smoking Joe would be up here all the time. I'd stop by my parents' house that I grew up with as a kid. The neighbors would go crazy. But none of it was authentic. And I think there's always that angle. Oh, I needed to be there. I want the neighbors. Yeah.
Right.
Everyone needs to see.
Yeah.
What's up? Yeah, who's that? There's always that. Yeah, the dumb one, right? Yeah, okay, baseball cards, whatever, autograph signs. But now look, now what's up?
I'm the king.
The richest people in this town don't have this access.
Can't touch me.
They're lining up like little kids and friggin', living in multi-million-dollar estates and gated communities. And I'm sitting there with Smoking Joe in the corner of the town diner, and these doctors and lawyers and heavyweights are coming over asking me, I'm so sorry for bothering you. Is it okay if I could shake his hand and maybe take a picture? And I know who these people are, and I know their type of wealth. It was an ego trip. It's an ego trip, especially in my own town. But I thought also that was real success. None of it was, because I'm still, as my dear friend Jay Shetty said, I got to the top, and I'm staring backwards. Most people, they're not looking backwards. I was, because of the unhealing, because not addressing whatever trauma I thought I had, whatever broken spirit, broken soul, insecurity. Yeah. Obviously, that didn't come until I started my recovery journey.
By the way, I understand that very well, what you just said about, it's all subjective, right? To your point, it's like, what is the definition of success? I realized even in my own evolution that part of what grips me is my rearview mirror, and less, I wouldn't say it, less about, insecurities and things, but more from a traumatic experience, in my case, from an accident. And I share this often, where there's an image in my head that always hits, where I remember the crash like it was yesterday. You were getting hit by a 50-mile-an-hour car not far from here in front of the Orleans Hotel. and I'm on the side that gets hit. And I mean, that's a fierce image. And so as I'm moving forward, I'm also looking backwards because in my mind, I'm always thinking worst case, crash and burn. And that right there where it's like, okay, I've made it, but then I'm looking back to see what's the wake behind me. God, man, it's like, do you have a thought? And we're going to get into the recovery and all that stuff because I know that's where we're going to really center a lot of our conversation here. But do you think, or do you understand of, or do you know where people, even like me, where I'm thinking, you know, worst case because of this image that always pops up in my head, a method or a pathway that can help somebody disassociate from that, right? From that thing that's behind them, whether it was a traumatic event, whether it was an insecurity or a lack of self-worth or whatever that might be. How does Darren Prince see that?
I mean, for me, it's just consistently being your new self, staying into that new routine. I think anybody that's trying to move away from a certain mindset or a certain way of life, same thing we say in our fellowship, people, places, and things. You change the people you hang around, change the places you go, and to change the things that you do. Because if you want to hang with people still that are going nowhere in life, guess what? You're going to go nowhere. If you want to hang with half your crew that's still smoking mirrors, you're going to eventually be that smoke and mirror person. If you're comfortable enough to hang around people that are where you're trying to get to, watch what happens to your life. And it's okay to look at the past, but as my sponsor told me, don't stare at it too long. And that's okay. Fine. But, you know, I think a lot of it is your environment. And like I said, it's that consistency. The reason why, if anybody, you know, in your audience that listens is in recovery, the reason we say 90 meetings in 90 days in the 12-step rooms is, you know, it's obviously a fact that you do something for 90 days in a row. It shifts your brain, changes everything about, you know, that pattern, that routine, that structure. To me, it wasn't that hard. Like I said, you don't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it, as we say. And so I never stared at it too long. But I'm very big on structure and routine.
Sure. Yeah.
Very rare that I fall off of it.
Right. That's good. It's the word that comes to my mind is rumination, right? When people are ruminating from the backwards to the front. So you brought up the recovery process and sponsor, and you know, obviously that takes us towards AA. I want to share something with you that somebody shared with me once, not long ago, maybe a year and a half ago, because I was explaining to this guy. He's a very wise, older, he's in his 70s now, built a very successful company, very important guy of the church, preacher and all these things. And I told him I was interested in talking about these things that we're talking about here, recovery. And he sent me something about AA. And in the virtue of the personal development world and growth world that we explore, what we say matters, right? The spoken word has weight. And his message to me was, Manny, don't you think when you go into AA and you're constantly voicing, hey, my name is, and I'm an alcoholic, that is not a healthy message to keep sending to yourself? And it made me think, and I said, man, that's a profound point. I understand where you're coming from with that. However, you would have a lot of people that argue that point that are true believers and diehards of AA. And I do believe different systems work for different people. But if I was to toss the ball to you and ask you, what do you think about that comment where someone gets up and says, hey, my name is Darren and I'm an alcoholic, against what somebody would tell you in a learning environment? Not, you know, I'm not trying to create a huge separation, but it is, you know, what you say matters, and don't say something where it's like, I am broke. Well, why would you say that to yourself, right? And so I'm curious how you feel when I say that and what your thought process is on that in terms of wisdom.
In the 88 years that I'm going to break the anonymity because you did it before me of AA and NA, there's a lot of old timers that don't like that. And, I've been blessed to be at Dr. Bob and Bill W.'s house in Akron, Ohio on my 9-year sober birthday. And they actually said that Bill W., was the co-founder in the early 70s, realized that the anonymity part might have to have some flexibility towards the end of his life because there is a fellowship out there, regardless of the fact that a large percentage still doesn't make it. People do make it. Yeah. You and I are here to say there is something out there to find hope and recovery and a life beyond your wildest dreams. Well, a lot of people that go back out, a lot of people that relapse, I've heard they either relapse or they die, and it's because of a bad memory. So I don't ever want to forget where I came from because there's an expression, don't ever let AA keep you from what it gave you coming to AA. And what happens is people get complacent. They get comfortable with their new life. You know what? I don't need as many meetings. I'm still guilty of it at times. Sure. Like that's why I make sure I log on to Zoom meetings if I can't get in my car. It's normal. You don't get sober to hide out into a 12-step room every single day for the rest of your life. Right. But you still better maintain that connection. Hey, I'm okay if a meeting every day doesn't work for somebody because they got 20, 30 years or 10 years, whatever, and you're spiritually aligned. Whatever works for you, everybody's different.
Correct.
We don't go there to learn how not to drink and not to take drugs on a daily basis. What people don't realize is we get that spiritual reprieve. Mm-hmm. So why would I not want that as much as possible? To learn how to say what I mean what I say, and not say it mean. To keep my big mouth shut or don't send that text when I have to be like, I'd rather feel all right than right. Because I open up my mouth. Did
y'all hear that?
The energy is going to ruin my day.
Can you say that again?
I'd rather feel all right than right.
That's rock star stuff right there, ladies and gentlemen.
But that's why I have to stay in sync with the fellowship. I need to understand people instead of me being understood. If it's my mother, a coworker, a friend, my girlfriend, whoever, associate, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they've got unresolved trauma and issues. Because if I'm going to let them affect me and give my power back and get off that spiritual beam, well, guess what? My sobriety, my recovery ain't where I think it is. I shouldn't be on podcasts talking about this is what worked for me because I'm still a bit of a fraud. But that's what I get from staying aligned to my spiritual brothers and sisters and saying, I'm Darren. I'm an addict, alcoholic, substance abuser of the first kind. I love anything that affects me from the neck up. So I've never had a problem with it. I learned that from old timers. Yeah. Typically, you probably are hearing from somebody that's not really dialed into the recovery world. That might say, oh, isn't that a bad thing to keep telling yourself that? Then you never, ever stop thinking that way. I never want to forget who I am.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I think it was my boy Omar on his podcast, Omar the Rockstar. He was like, I am completely at peace with my legacy when the day comes, and hopefully it's 30, 40 years from now. I'm only 53. That my tombstone says a man that went deep in hell and came out of the other side and sprinkled hope and recovery around the world to those that needed it. I don't give a shit about anything about the ancient life. Like I said, I'm nobody special. I just happen to figure out a way to be a master relationship builder, good at negotiating, honest, hardworking. I've got a relentless work ethic, but they're the ones that are legends and icons. And I hear these things, oh, you're the GOAT, you're the legend, super agent. No, for any agent that wants to believe that, and I said it in the book, or super, entertainment agent or music manager, you still need the talent to become who we are. Remember that. So I don't need that egotistical title.
Sure.
Everybody I have was who they were long before Darren Prince ever came along. I just eventually became my real authentic self after meeting them in a different mindset and they've all seen the transition. And most likely, if any of them were here, would tell you they probably hold me in higher regard now. And they have more respect than they've ever had before because of things like this and things like aiming high. And told you on the car ride here, Bridge Therapeutics, they have this groundbreaking product about to come out. I'm on the commercial advisory board, and it's Suboxone on steroids that can help people with pain management, detoxing properly, to get the life they deserve. Like this thing comes to market eventually after FDA approval. That to me is the most incredible thing I could ever be affiliated with my entire life. That I'm actually part of like this brilliant group of doctors and scientists that developed this to help moms and dads get their kids back and adults change and save their lives. And how many lives could be impacted from this opiate epidemic from, what Bridge Therapeutics is doing. Like, I'm an agent, like stuff like that. Like, I'm not supposed to be somebody that's talking about a product, but had I not owned up to who I am, that means more to me than anything. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And you know that as somebody in recovery.
Yeah.
If you could have created this magic pill or something to get people to stop drinking or whatever it might be, and it changes their life, I mean, it's incredible.
There was a incident here in Vegas. It feels like a couple of years ago now, where one of the new Raiders, you may have heard of this, you probably did.
The car accident.
Ruggs. Yeah, Henry Ruggs went out and got drunk. They were intoxicated. Not far from where I have, my family's house.
Ruined his whole life.
Yeah, because he was drunk. And then, but here's the thing that, and I put out a message at that point, Darren, where I said, Henry Ruggs is not a bad guy.
Yep.
He made a bad decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's consequences to those decisions, right? That could have been you or me.
Yep.
Like, do you know how many times I got in my car after I was wasted here in Vegas after partying literally for a whole decade?
Yep.
Every night, almost every week.
Having no idea how you got home.
No idea. But I was lucky enough to not get a ticket, get pulled over, crash, nothing.
Yep.
And so I just remember that it was in that time where there was a lot of stir-up controversy around what he did there and the fact that, he ended up killing that girl that was in the other car. And I said, that could have been any one of us. Anybody. It could be you that gets out. But the choice for you now is to think about that when you go to take that drink and historically you've gone out and you drove or you've done something after the fact. Is it worth it? Right? Is it worth it? You said something in there that I want to draw some attention to because I think it happens a lot in how people interact with themselves. You mentioned you're a great negotiator, right? In this now business world, I think people negotiate with themselves, right? About this idea of transforming and becoming somebody else, going to this newfound land of self-revelation and getting clear and more spiritual. They're negotiating with themselves about, should I do it? And then they're selling themselves on why they shouldn't, right? In terms of negotiation. So there's this negotiation constantly going on inside the head. How would you take your negotiation abilities and tell somebody to rewire how they negotiate with themselves so they can go out and create the life that they want?
I mean, I think you have to just be fully accountable on whatever it might be that, you're struggling with. It's so easy to blame it on your mom, dad, sister, brother, friends. It still doesn't matter. You still made the choice to live a certain way. Nobody put a gun to our head and said, you better bid this bet. No, go back to the root of it. Just like therapy. But, for everybody, it doesn't need to be therapy. It could be a form of meditation, self-help books, or watching videos on YouTube, or, like I said, listen to my boys like Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty, and I love Tony Robbins, and Joel Osteen is a good friend. Like, there's things out there that you can find your own level of healing. And it always comes down to, I don't care what your situation was. If you heard some of the most horrific stories in the world of people's environments growing up, that turned out to be some of the most incredible success stories. Why did theirs go that way? And they had no self-destructive behavior.
Yeah.
If it's a choice that you made, and you're living in a town now where some of the worst choices are made in the country because they call it Sin City for a reason.
They make the choice before they come here.
You know? Yeah. Well, I think they have in mind what they're going to do. And it's that quick money. It's that mindset. It's that I'm going to be young forever. I'm going to, just, it's not reality. You know, I believe that, so many people, when they eventually leave here, they're just so infested with trauma and just bad experiences, thinking at that time, whatever it was, whatever life they were living made sense. It's the reason so many people leave. I think Miami can be that way too.
Sure.
There's certain cities. I mean, New York, same. Yeah. I'm from that area. I know people that just got fed up. It's a city that never sleeps.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm aware. Yeah.
And, sometimes a geographical change will help because you're surrounding yourself with a different vibe. But, you cannot, that's the key. Stop, my mother didn't do this. My dad didn't do that. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. That ain't healing.
It's powerful. Yeah. It's deferring. It's like tax deferral. You defer tax. You just kind of kick the can down the road.
The other one I hate is people like, oh, no, you don't understand. I understand. And by you saying that, right there, you just told me you ain't ready.
Correct. And you're unwilling to do what's required to solve the problem.
Like, I'd be okay saying, I don't expect people to understand because that's got a little bit of a level of, my thought process doesn't make sense to most people. But to be like, you don't know, that's, you might as well be living the life that you've been living anyway, because you ain't going nowhere. You're not manifesting any sort of spiritual healing.
In a moment of vulnerability right here, I can say that I've caught myself saying that in events where in my relationship with my fiance, I say those things. And that's just in humility, right? Because in my case, the situation from losing my mom at a young age and dealing with that trauma, I've realized in awareness that there's still things that come up to which I have to go in and then check in on myself.
But you could also reword it.
Sure.
In a way where, let me explain why I feel this way. And then you can go take her or remind her again about your journey.
Right.
Because if it gets that heated, you don't understand. That doesn't,
solution.
Then you're still in that victim mentality mode. Yeah. And of course you dealt with horrible life experiences. But no, say what you mean what you're saying, don't say and mean. You take that deep breath, and I'm not always perfect at it, but I'm a lot better. Saying, babe, let me just remind you why. I know it might make sense to you, but why I feel this way and why it's got a reaction to me. And then you can go into it. That's healing.
Yeah, that's good.
That's powerful. And what that does in a relationship, because I have a young girlfriend, just turned 26, and 27 years apart, and very emotionally mature for her age. But we've noticed when those moments happen, that's real intimacy. That's like real human connection with somebody. When you can kind of get through stuff like that and explain it where I don't expect you to understand it, but I just need you to see it from my side. That's like amazing when you can communicate that way. Because now again, your energy's good. You're not fighting. You're not arguing. You're not justifying. You're not playing the victim mentality. You're not like stomping your feet and telling this person, "But this is me and I'm not changing." No, we all become adults at a certain point, and stuff we've all experienced, good, bad, or indifferent, as children, as teenagers, affects us the rest of our life. All of our character defects.
Yeah. I think that the pureness of what you just said is what's important. And I think about the healing process in total on the spirituality side, which I kind of want to dive into that in a second. But as I've said to you, or as I say on any one of my shows or episodes I do, is I always hear what you say, and then people are probably going to be like, "You say that all the time, Manny." I'm like, "Yes, exactly," because that's exactly what I do. But I source my questions out of the conversation, right? It just comes through, which is a beautiful place to be. You talked about the girlfriend. Now I'm triangulating that back to our conversation earlier. You mentioned something about you once were married. Now, was that in that time frame, the once married divorce situation, a byproduct of your decisions in life and your choosings to do drugs and party and all that stuff? Or was there still other parts of you that were empty in that category? And maybe even, what are some of the elements that you were able to learn as a result of that continued to make you a better man in that department? Because that's another department, kind of independent of all these other things, right? So I'm curious what you think about that.
I mean, my ex-wife and I met probably 2003, 2004. We were together maybe 4 years, eventually got engaged, got married. She met me the first couple of years of it. It was still fun, and then it started getting really bad. And beautiful girl from Australia. We really didn't have a father figure in her life. I've always loved being that caretaker. Always very empowering and nurturing. Even I wasn't in my mindset. And God bless her, because, every once in a while we still, we'll text, maybe once a year or something, or keep in touch. And I just spoke to her best friend, Emma, who moved back to Australia and got married and has couple beautiful girls. And we were all roommates at one point in LA when I was at my worst. It's funny because Jay Shetty's team is hooking her husband up to go to his show next month in Brisbane, Australia, and meet Jay.
That's awesome.
So she's over the moon. And
that's awesome.
She just said how beautiful this whole journey's been, because she knew at a certain point the pain that I was in. And I told her, I was like, it gets me emotional. I was like, I got no ill will against my ex-wife, because she tried. She was there. We were in this city 2007 during NBA All-Star Weekend when I had my first overdose, getting ready to go with Dennis Rodman to Square Strip Club. We were going to go out and celebrate a TV show deal we did with Mark Cuban, his network HDNet. It was called Geek to Freak, and too much Tussinex cough syrup and snorting too many Percocets and mixed it with vodka, Red Bull Cranberry. And it took me even after that experience a year until I had my God moment. And she was there right through it, locking myself in the bathroom. My uncle and his then girlfriend, who, Andrea, I never met her before. I met her the day before my journey started. And she just knew I was spent. And I opened up to her, and she put me on this detox plan. And I said I couldn't do it. 24 hours later, I called them. I'm calling the freaking doctor, locked myself in the bathroom at my apartment in New York City. Simone's in the living room, banging on the door, baby, don't do it. She thinks I'm either going to overdose or going to take my life. And out came one of the medicine bottles. I was looking for non-narcotic anxiety meds, but out came 3 Vicodins. And we knew we cleaned out every medicine cabinet. This is weird. Why are there Vicodins there? And, I had a God moment, because I fell on my knees. I screamed out to God, take the money, take the business, and take the notoriety. I need a single day of freedom. If you take me out of hell, I will spend one day at a time taking others out with me. And I got this burning hot sensation over my right shoulder, and I stood up. I flushed the bills, went into the living room, found a 12-step meeting online at probably 8 o'clock at night on that Sunday, July 2nd, 2008. This gorgeous summer night, I'm in a taxi cab heading to a church, and she came with me. And, she was fully supportive. But what also happens when you start the sober journey, you change. And things that I thought we had in common and things that were attractive qualities of mine and or hers, they're no longer there.
That's right. You got together for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
Right? The things
because
you thought were important.
Because she met an individual, and that's heartbreaking, because she finally thought she got her husband back. And she got Darren back, but it wasn't what I thought this marriage was. And look, as a man that's highly driven with work and competitiveness and so selfish early on in recovery, making it about me, and she supported as much as she could, but it just didn't work. And I can't have any ill will against that, man, because, she truly was there to see the bottom to the beginning. And if she wasn't there, I might not be here right now. I can almost tell you that. So I gave her nothing but love for an aiming high. My ex-fiance is another one. 2 Australian girls, imagine. One was from Brisbane and the ex-fiance is from Sydney. That didn't, work out, but we're still super close to this day. And
nothing but love.
I think that's also what recovery is like. My girlfriend now, Nicolette, she's young, and she goes, "How do you I don't understand how you still speak to the ex-fiance, the girlfriend, like when it's over, isn't it done?" And I was like, you can't let the past make you bitter. It's about making you better. So at one point, there had to be some sort of friendship. You still make this person a part of your everyday life. And yeah, during the breakup phase, you might not speak for a few months or 6 months or whatever, but there was still some sort of friendship and respect. So check in once in a while, make sure somebody's okay, and vice versa. I think that's nice, But I also think a lot of that is recovery.
Yeah,
I think that's the way we live our life. Like, you can't just cut somebody off, especially when you've met them while you're sober, because recovery teaches us that. There's a purpose for everybody.
The resemblance of what you're sharing in comparison to the situation where it was the night here in Vegas, I had met a girl from the UK in Vegas while I was promoting, and we really were gravitated towards each other. We had a great time while she was here on her first trip. She flew home. Then she flew back specifically to Vegas from the UK to come spend time with me. We went on a vacation together to Southern California, had a great time, and then went out the last night of her trip before she was flying home. And I had some very wealthy friends in town. We all went out together and we got high, took all the Molly, all the cocaine, drank our asses off. Patron. We had the main dance floor table, as I'm sure you know what that's like.
Yep.
And the next morning, I woke up and it was like, she was looking at me like I was an alien from outer space. And I just was like, well, what happened? And she started telling me the whole story about how I physically was hitting her. I was trying to kick her out of a taxi cab while we were moving. And I started to think to myself, that's how bad I get when I'm drunk and I don't know and I don't remember and I black out. Mind you, this happened several times along the cycle of the 10 years. And anyway, my point of that is that I made the choice that day to get sober. She went back home, and like you said, where there's that now revelation that like you and I's relationship is now finished. I love you as a human being, but I'm not going back and ever pursuing this because now you want to sit on the phone and talk all night and WhatsApp and send photos. And I'm like, I'm going to create my life. And I'm sorry, but I don't have the time for you that you want or need from me. And therefore I've got to separate from that. And so it was that separation there that I think you just brought up with, like, you're just different people, right? So I think that's uniquely similar in our stories.
It doesn't mean they're bad people.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's just you evolve and go into different directions. That's exactly
what it is. I want to talk about two things that I think are really prevalent right now. One is the spirituality side of things, and the other is this idea of peace. I think a lot of times, and I'm curious just kind of your general take on the spirituality side of things. It's like this exploration of different consciousnesses and, attitudes. And I know everybody has probably a varying definition, but like, what is in essence the spirituality side of what you keep referring to and mentioning in practical living and existing form versus just a kind of a topic to talk about? Because I think there's a lot of people that are either not in their spirituality or are close and need to break into it, because that's really where I feel like life gets sexy outside of all the business and the money and the fame and all that stuff. It's like when you're at a spiritual point where you're feeling light as a feather, it feels like the world is yours, right?
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, but it takes work. Even I don't get there every day. I'm there a lot more times than not. I also have the tools now to know sometimes what that sweet spot needs to be to pull myself back in. my friends, family, anybody knows, you're up my ass, you're bothering me too much, you're done. I ain't calling you for days. I don't care. You better respect my time and you better respect my journey.
Sure.
Because if you're up my ass with too many calls and you want to keep talking, that I mean, I'm still an introvert too.
Sure.
I like my space, you know, because I got to be in on mode all the time as an agent. And now, especially with this advocacy, if you're taking my good energy when you're going to start my morning, like Hulk Hogan and I were talking about a couple nights ago, people like that, I'll still love you from a distance or I'll make time for you, but it's not going to be part of my daily routine because you're going to drain that energy and I don't need it. You know, I just, you know, I'll give people a free pass once in a while if something where they, you know, irritate me. But I think when I'm just dialed in and really, truly, bro, like when it's not even the business side of thing. I think it's when I'm like doing so good, like service work. And I'm getting emails and DMs from people and text messages and getting people into treatment through my Aiming High Foundation that we're able to scholarship them. That's when it's like I feel that and I'm connected to the fellowship. It's almost like a bulletproof feeling. Like I'm just like, this is exactly where I want to try to be every day. Like my sponsor says, we all want life to be like lasagna. And if you can keep it there more times than not, you got a good spot. You got a good shot. I hate referring to him as my sponsor. Steve Della Valle's more just like my spiritual biggest number one big brother. And we teach each other so much and learn so much. And I think that's what it's about. Like you're not going to get it every day. Nobody is. You know?
Yeah, it's powerful. By the way, this is the book, Aiming High. Praise for Darren Prince. I'm reading the backside. So we've got words here from Hulk Hogan, Dennis Rodman, Chris Herron, Mark Cuban, Jeannie Buss, Kevin Harrington, Ric Flair, Jason Ben. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you go get that one. We're going to let you share where everybody can find you as this thing continues to balloon, as we talked about earlier at the lunch table. There's, I think you've been privy to a lot of locker room conversations that I think the world is curious about, or even a level of proximity that very few will ever get to experience. Is there lessons out of those private plane flights, those car rides, you're sitting in those rooms with Hulk or Magic, where they're teaching you something or sharing with you something that make you a better man and human being that they're not talking about or nobody else is privy to have that, like you said earlier, access to hear the wisdom that they've got? I'm very curious about what you were able to pull out from that standpoint that helped you turn into this guy that stands or sits before us today in this presence, and what contribution they had to that in that form.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten something from every one of them. But interesting enough, if Hulk was here right now, he would tell you he gets a lot out of me now too. They all do. Ric Flair, Charlie Sheen, our conversations are amazing. Carmen Electra, Denise Richards, everybody. Chevy. I think, the earlier years and maybe probably around the time I was getting sober and getting comfortable in my own skin, I was, absorbing as much as I could. But then eventually, once I realized this was my calling, and like Hulk said, almost 15 years ago, I asked for the blessing, and eventually God said, "You've come to me correct. Now it's time to make you a blessing to others. You've absorbed and picked up enough. Now you need to be a vessel." And, Smoke and Joe used to say there's no wrong way to do right and no right way to do wrong. Hulk always says life is about riding the highs and surviving the lows. Everybody's got a little something that I've picked up on. Jerry West is very near and dear to me. He was at my place a week and a half ago, and just tells me all the time if I went through some text messages, Thanksgiving, my birthday, how much he admires this. This is a guy that's got the greatest front office resume in the history of global sports, the NBA logo. He's in the Showtime Lakers. the Kobe Shaq Lakers, the first Golden State Warriors team. You know, he's a genius, not only, you know, what he did on the court, but off it, and openly talks about suicidal depression. Struggled with it his whole life. So we have this very deep bond and connection, and he needs to hear messages from me. And he's, 83, 84 years old. It's beautiful to be able to do that, you know, and for all of them. I think, you know, I hear about their adversities during their career, during the height of their career, some that have happened after. But then I also really get the privilege of understanding the mindset of what it took to make that comeback. And, you know, hearing stories from, you know, Magic, how it was, I think, was it the 84 NBA Finals? Had that terrible game. And in Game 7, I think the LA Times, up in Boston, the LA Times put him on the front cover, Tragic Magic, because they should have won the NBA championship that year in 7 games. And just didn't have a good game. And, you know, what he did to get as many of those newspapers as possible, and worked every day, twice as hard during the summer with Pat Riley and everything he had to do to come back and, you know, have that experience, which I think happened the next season or two, literally Game 4 or 5 in Boston, and made that iconic. And I hated him because I was a Celtic fan at the time. I didn't know this story. I didn't know the inside scoop. But how that moment, you know, that wasn't luck. That was preparation, meeting opportunity. Because he was spending thousands of hours and nobody knew behind the scenes to make sure when that moment comes back again, ain't nobody stopping me.
Yeah, that's it, man. I mean, I think there's a series of different things that have to all sort of coexist simultaneously, and when that thing strikes, you got to jump on it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a great one that Joe Montana told me, the drive, I think the 20-19 win versus the Bengals, and he had that Super Bowl winning drive with whatever it was, 65 seconds left to go 90 yards. And it's a true story. There's been rumors about it, but he told me that John Candy, the famous late actor, was on the sideline eating popcorn, and Harrison Barton, his offensive lineman or center, used to say it was just a big-time celebrity stalker. And it was so funny because here we are, the Super Bowl champs, and he just was enamored by other celebrities, and they were enamored by them. And he knew he had to get him into the right mindset because he was a nervous wreck, and gets everybody in the huddle because Harrison, look, there's John Candy on the sideline eating popcorn. You got billions of people around the world. It's the reason they call him Joe Cool, because he knew how to bring everybody down and then bring them together. And I'm about 15, 16 years old then. I don't know the story ever existed. And he's like, the minute he had that eye contact with him and had him in that relaxed state, he goes, come on, boys, let's go win the Super Bowl. A minute later, historic drive and win the Super Bowl. I just love that, how they could get dialed in. And, you know, Hulk telling me about like WrestleMania with Andre and The Rock, and, you know, how, you know, certain things happen. And, you know, even Robin over the years, people hear stories about studying the rotation on the basketball. That was his superpower. His film would be watching the top scorers in the other team and notice the different rotations and where it hit out on that backboard with that rotation, on how he had to position his body to be there to grab the rebound.
That fine. It's that fine, like that detailed.
Yep.
Do you think that whether it's a successful business guy, athlete, in your existence, and even in parallel to what you've become, that these people, including yourself, share common characteristics, or are they more into their superpower and they understand it and they know it? Or is it a combination of the simple stuff, which not so simple because doing it is harder, but preparation, mindset, work ethic, those things? Or are you seeing something different that helps any one of these individuals be that standout type of a personality or person?
I don't think there's anything specific. I mean, just for me, like, you can't teach a superpower. That's just something that's developed.
Right.
You eventually know after years and years and planting the seeds and grinding it out. When you look back and somebody say, what are the 2 or 3 things? Like, I know what those are now. But they happen organically.
Right.
I don't need to try, everybody's got something within them. But without taking that shot, without surrounding yourself with people that have the success you're trying to get to so you can learn from the years of mistakes and accelerate years of success by learning what worked for them, they make it a lot harder to get there. You still might get there.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot longer, though.
Yeah.
And a lot of bumps in the road.
No, definitely. There's a lot of those. I feel remorsed a little bit about having to wrap this up. Couple things. First thing is, I just want to give you my appreciation for, in our virtual text message meeting from a mutual friend, your willingness to jump on the phone, and then us trying to coordinate this, and your initiative to try to get out here at multiple times, man, that means the world to me. And hopefully we had some fun here enough to get some extreme value out of it for you. But, that approach just demonstrates your willingness to continue to live in your purpose. And I just know, it's not underappreciated whatsoever. It's like, it's almost like I can't express it enough. So I just want to tell you thank you for that. Is there anything that you would like to share that we didn't cover that you think is valuable, that you really want to hammer on real quick, or that you would want to wrap this up with because it's so pressing or important to you and people need to hear this today?
I just think anybody that's out there sick and suffering, or it's like mental health or substance abuse, strength is asking for help. I always tell people that no one's ever going to judge you for asking for help, and it's tough out there for a lot of people. And if I could do it, anybody could. And believe me, I was just up for grabs like anybody else. I don't want to hear, oh, you had these clients and that one. No, because if anything, I'm even more susceptible because everything's fair game with finances. I could have put anything in my system. So when you're really at a bottom financially and a bottom emotionally, it's harder. I had everything on my fingertips. But I just wanted it more than anything in this world. And I still wanted it more than anything in this world. And recovery and mental health comes before anything in my life. It's number one. It always will be. Because anything I put before it, I'll lose. I could lose Prince Barkin Group tomorrow. I told you this. If I lost the money, closed up shop, nobody wanted to book and hire celebrities and athletes anymore. The only heartbreaking part would be my 8 agents, 2 assistants, my mom, my sister, I'm going to be able to take care of. I'd move into a little studio this big and I'd be able to say, God, what a run we had, man. 30 years. And thank you for allowing me to find my real self. And what's next? What do you got next? Because what a life it's been. And some of the most successful people, I said, son Jay Shetty will never understand that feeling. It's the intangible. But you could all get there. Anybody listening, you get to that root. You dig in deep. David Goggins is my man. He's also a client. I'll be back here in December with him. He says, you better go to fucking war with yourself if you want to heal. And that's what I did. And there's days that I still got to do it. Everybody has their different levels of wars. Everybody has their different level of trauma, pain, healing, whatever it might be. It's what you see, not what others. It's what you need to just get that feeling of happy, joyous, and free, right? That's Absolutely. What you and I strive for every day. Happy, joyous, and free, and peaceful, and gratitude. And we're never going to get it every day. That ain't reality. But when you're there a lot more times than not, life is good.
That's a good bet right there, man. That's on the house, as we said earlier. And I think with how you said that, if I can give everybody a bonus of what you just said. It's not just everybody that's struggling with substance abuse or some sort of piece of their life, if it's related to some sort of alcohol or drugs. Ask for help in general, man.
Yep.
Right? Don't be afraid to ask.
Whatever it is that you're struggling with.
Exactly. If it's business, ask for help.
It's got to be somebody.
It's your relationship. Ask for help.
Yep.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
I agree with you 1,000%. And I think that's where you start to expose the vulnerabilities and the rawness of where people have a hard time going. But well said, man. I mean, I again, we could talk for hours, and next time we'll have to schedule. You say, I just set you up for next time? Wink, wink.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to end it, man. We wrapped it perfect.
Where can we find you? And then I do have to ask you the last question, which I always ask everybody.
Instagram is @agent_DP. And I have a Facebook page, Darren Prince. I think it's Los Angeles, California.
Okay. Website or anything like that?
The business website is princemarketinggroup.com. Official DarrenPrince.com is my recovery site. And then I've got the AimingHighFoundation.org, which is my 501c3. And Aiming High, people could just log online, Barnes & Nobles, Amazon.
And I cannot wait to dive into that. In respect of the show is always on the grow with myself. I don't need to say with Manny Vargas because that'd be a bit narcissistic. But what does that mean to you, man? What does always on the grow mean to Darren Prince?
It's just not being complacent, just always trying to find a way to evolve and improve, sense of self. And, I think complacency and being stagnant in life isn't good for anybody. It's the point of waking up in the morning and staying in that same boring ass routine. We should always want more as human beings, and professionally and personally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, it's where you avoid what Darren said earlier, that loser coming back and talking to you, trying to take you in the opposite direction. My brother, I feel like a brother right after in our connection and just our stories. So much gratitude, so much love for you. You're crushing it in all areas of life. And I just hope that everybody that ends up listening to this understands why we work so hard behind the scenes to make this happen. And for that, my man, I'm going to give you the big salute and say over and out.
Thank you, my brother. Same
right.
here. Thank you for having me. Let's help save and change some lives from this one.
We got lots to do there. Yeah.